An ancient structure, the largest of its kind, is standing silent and ominous in the Egyptian desert. What if this pyramid, the Pyramid of Cheops, isn't just an ancient tomb? What if it's the colossal foundation of a long-lost technology far beyond our understanding, built as part of an ancient space elevator? A space elevator sounds like something out of a futuristic sci-fi movie. It's a massive cable anchored to Earth and going all the way up to the stars, allowing travel to and from space without rockets. What if someone managed to build it millennia before us? Let's start with the pyramid itself. The Pyramid of Cheops isn't just any pyramid. It's the heaviest and most precise of all the pyramids on our planet. Historians believe it's around 4,500 years old. But there's an opinion that it might be much, much older. Some claim that there's evidence supporting this theory, but it has been dismissed by Egyptologists. Probably because it doesn't fit the established story, or because the implications are too world-shaking. Now, look at the pyramid structure, at these huge blocks stacked with laser-like precision, aligned to true north, rising up in a sharp, stable form. Inside, there are only a few narrow, sloping corridors and a small number of rooms. The corridors don't even make sense for human movement. They're narrow, angular, probably designed to accommodate something else, something functional. The passages themselves look more like maintenance tunnels than ceremonial spaces. They don't even run horizontally, slanting inward and downward as if carrying some hidden purpose. There are also diagonal channels running from the edges toward the center, their purpose unknown. Lubrication channels or pressure tunnels. And then there's the main room, situated close to the pyramid's heart, but not right in the center. Why? Now look at this bizarre vertical shaft at the very top, piercing downward toward the center. Around the pyramid, there's rust, thousands of tons of it. What if it's the remnants of a technological complex? An ancient spaceport decayed into dust and debris millennia ago? Could the rooms have been technical chambers for maintaining the impossible? A cable that stretched all the way into space? Then the corridors and channels could have been used to stabilize, fasten, or even power this mysterious device. Historians insist these pyramids were tombs or ritual sites. At the same time, when archaeologists can't explain an ancient structure, they often default to religious use. The truth may be far more practical and shocking. The pyramid could have served as the base of an immense, stabilizing structure designed to extend a cable toward space. An ancient civilization could have built it to efficiently transport massive loads into orbit. A space elevator would have been efficient and economical and could have supported an advanced society's need for regular, dependable access to the sky. The pyramid's mass is beyond belief, and it might not be an accident. To anchor something like a space elevator, a structure would need to resist the pull of a cable stretching thousands of miles into orbit. It would need to balance centrifugal force with monumental gravity, and this colossal stone pyramid could have been that counterweight. And the pyramid's inner rooms, corridors, and channels might have served specific technical purposes. Next to the Pyramid of Cheops, there's the slightly smaller Pyramid of Khafra. It has similar diagonal corridors, similar central rooms, and the same purposeful alignment. Could it have been a version 1 space elevator? A prototype of the technology used in Cheops? Like old runways left abandoned at an airport, Khafra could be the first draft of something far grander. You might ask, why would anyone need such a colossal structure in the ancient past? Well, because the further you advance, the more you seek efficiency. A space elevator is the ultimate economical solution for transporting huge amounts of cargo to and from orbit. It's the dream of modern engineers, and maybe it was the achievement of an ancient society. We barely know who lived on Earth 10,000 years ago, let alone what technology they might have wielded. What if there was once a civilization advanced enough to build such an elevator? They may not have been human altogether. Maybe they were visitors. Perhaps they were Earth-based. We might never find the answers to this mystery.
We know that the ancient Egyptians were talented enough to build something as grand as the pyramids, but were they also smart enough to measure the speed of light? There's a theory circulating online that says exactly that. If you look at these two numbers, you'll see that they match completely. The first one is the speed of light in a vacuum measured in meters, and the second one is the latitude of the Great Pyramid of Giza. So, was it done on purpose, or is it just a coincidence? Well, happily, we can tell you that it's actually just a coincidence. not another conspiracy thingy. The Great Pyramid is just one of the many places in the world that share the same latitude. And more importantly, even if the ancient Egyptians had somehow measured the speed of light and chosen to keep it a secret from the rest of the world, they wouldn't have used meters to put it down. Meters were only defined at the end of the 18th century. The builders of the pyramids used a different unit of measure called cubits. 1 cubit is equal to 1.5 feet. Cubit was based on the length of the arm from the elbow to the tip of the middle finger, and it became popular in the ancient world. So if they wanted to impress the rest of the world and set the pyramids at a point that matched the speed of light in cubits, they would have to build their iconic constructions somewhere in Europe. And then the Danish astronomer who first measured the speed of light in 1676 would have been really upset to know that someone had done it centuries before him. So, although they were ahead of their time in many aspects, the ancient Egyptians never measured the speed of light or used longitude and latitude to map their locations. The base of the Great Pyramid of Giza might seem like a perfect square, but it's actually an 8-sided structure, not 4-sided. Each of its 4 sides has a subtle concave indentation that splits it evenly from base to tip. The official version is that a British pilot was the first to notice it in 1940 while flying over the pyramid. He took a photograph that showed shadows highlighting these indentations. Some people think these lines are only visible from above and can best be seen at dawn and dusk during the spring and autumn equinoxes. This has led to a freaky theory that the ancient Egyptians might have designed the pyramids to communicate with something looking at them from above. Now, the Great Pyramid is one of only 3 pyramids that used to have a swivel door. It weighed around 20 tons, but they could still easily open it from the inside. Its precise fit made it nearly invisible from the outside, with no visible latch or handle. There were only slight variations in the exterior stone that gave out an opening. The other 2 pyramids with similar doors belonged to Khufu's father and grandfather. The Great Pyramid also has a hidden void at least 100 feet long that was only found in 2017. We still don't know what lies within the space, what purpose it served, or if it is the only space of its kind. Researchers used the same tech to see through cathedral walls, Mayan pyramids, and even volcanoes. It depends on a natural shower of subatomic particles called muons. They pass more easily through empty space than through solid materials. So if they arrange multiple muon detectors around a structure, scientists can map out its solid and empty areas. A team of scientists placed muon detectors inside the Great Pyramid and allowed them to gather data for months. Scientists have analyzed samples of the mortar used to build the pyramids many times. Although we know its composition, modern technology still can't replicate it. The mortar is mostly made from processed gypsum, but it wasn't used like the cement we use for bricks today. Instead, they used it to support the joints between the massive stones as they were set in place. The estimated amount they needed to construct the Great Pyramid was around 500,000 tons of mortar. The gypsum mortar is stronger than the stones themselves and has held up for thousands of years. Now, all 4 sides of the Great Pyramid are aligned with the cardinal points – north, south, east, and west. According to geologist and engineer Glenn Dash, the alignment is accurate to within 4 minutes of arc, or 1/15th of a degree. The architects managed to achieve this without modern tools like drones, blueprints, or computers. Many researchers try to explain this construction miracle. Maybe they used the pole star or the sun's shadow. Dash recently proposed a new, simpler idea. The Egyptians might have used the autumnal equinox to align the pyramids. It happens twice a year when the Earth's equator passes through the center of the sun's disk, making day and night nearly equal in length. To test his theory, Dash conducted an experiment on the 22nd of September 2016, the first day of the Fall Equinox. He used a special rod the Egyptians had to cast a shadow and tracked its tip at regular intervals, forming a smooth curve. By connecting 2 points of the curve with a taut string, he created an almost perfect east-west line. Dash noted that on the equinox, the shadow's tip runs in a straight line, nearly perfectly east-west, and with a slight counterclockwise error. There's a similar error in the pyramids. Although his experiment was conducted in Connecticut, Dash believes that the same method would work in Egypt. All the ancient Egyptians needed was a clear, sunny day. They could determine the fall equinox by counting 91 days from the summer solstice. But they left us few clues, and no engineering documents or architectural plans have been found that explain their methods. So they might have mapped shadows, but it's not definite. Now, scientists have long wondered how heavy stone blocks were carried to the pyramid sites, and they might finally have an answer. A research team from the University of North Carolina, Wilmington, has discovered that 31 pyramids are likely to have been built along a long-lost ancient branch of the River Nile. It's now hidden under desert and farmland. For many years, archaeologists have thought that ancient Egyptians must have used a nearby waterway to transport materials, equipment, people, and whatever else they needed to build the pyramids on the river. But up until now, they weren't certain of the location, shape, size, or proximity of this waterway to the site of the pyramids. The group of researchers used radar satellite imagery, historical maps, geophysical surveys, and sediment coring to map the river branch. They believe it was buried by a major drought and sandstorms thousands of years ago. The team managed to go below the sand surface and get images of some hidden features thanks to radar technology. They found hidden rivers and ancient structures running at the foothills of where most of the ancient Egyptian pyramids lie. The discovery of this extinct river branch helps explain the high pyramid density between Giza and Lisht, in what is now an inhospitable area of the Sahara Desert. Now, Egypt isn't the only country with the most pyramids in the world. The champion's title here goes to its southern neighbor, Sudan. It has between 200 and 255 pyramids, compared to Egypt's measly 138. They were built by members of the Kingdom of Kush, an ancient civilization that ruled the lands along the Nile River many years ago. They started erecting pyramids around 500 years after the Egyptians had stopped doing it. Their pyramids are much smaller than the Egyptian ones, but were built for the same purposes. Archaeologists are still working to find out how the pyramids in the Sudan were built, how long it took to complete them, and what happened to their society. A gruesome discovery took place in Egypt some years ago. You want to hear about it? 16 human hands, carefully buried in 4 eerie pits. They didn't look too much like human hands at first, since they were abnormally large, but they were. Weirdly, there were only right hands. No left hands were in sight. It turned out that it points to the practice of an ancient dark ritual. Old Egyptian art and tales talked of a ceremony where warriors would present the right hand of their adversaries as proof of victory and ask for gold in return. Egyptians believed in the afterlife, so cutting off someone's hand meant you cut off their power eternally. Guaranteeing this type of defeat was interesting to the winning party. Here, the fight was between Egyptians versus Hyksos, who lived in what was once known as Canaan. Egypt has always been the center of some history-changing findings, and some time ago, this papyrus was found. If we stretched it open, it would be just a tad bigger than the height of a skyscraper. The world's tiniest skyscraper, which is located in Wichita Falls, Texas. When humans didn't write on their notes app, they wrote on this thing, made from the medulla of a papyrus plant. Around 2,000 years ago, ancient Egyptians wrote something reminiscent of a book where they describe most of their funerary traditions and their visions of the afterlife. It's considered one of the most important texts from ancient Egypt and is still sold in bookstores to this day. This ancient manuscript was unearthed from a chamber located just south of the Pyramid of Djoser, located in Sakara. Oh yes, Djoser is the oldest pyramid in Egypt and not the Giza pyramids like most people think. So recently, the site of Sakara buzzed with excited archaeologists who probably found one of Egypt's oldest complete mummies. They believe that this beautiful and well-preserved mummy was that of a wealthy man. He was discovered in a deep shaft, covered in layers of gold leaves. There are many symbols that show he was an important and wealthy man, like the band he wore on his head, the bracelet on his chest, and the fact that he was embalmed with a tunic, which was reserved for Egypt's finest. The most exciting part of the entire discovery was finding the resting place sealed with mortar, just as the ancient Egyptians had left it 4,300 years ago. Now this may sound weird, but back in 2008, archaeologists discovered a missing pyramid. Now it went missing because it deteriorated over the span of 4,000 years. Today, you can only see its base. It was a pretty important site back in ancient times. It is said that around the area of the pyramid, the ancients hosted a special type of ceremony where high priests would carry mummified remains of sacred bulls. Now, here's a fun fact. Ancient Egyptians believed that Apis bulls were earthly incarnations of the city deity of Memphis and was connected to rites of fertility. It wasn't just any Apis bull, though. They needed to be all black, with a single white mark between its horns and a bunch of very specific characteristics. They were selected by the local priests and honored until they passed away. After that, they were mummified and buried in underground galleries. Meanwhile, this missing pyramid sort of disappeared around the 1800s. It was a German archaeologist who first found it in the village of Sakara. He called it the Headless Pyramid when he first found it. But then, years after the official discovery, the desert sand came along and covered the whole thing. There were some excavations between the 19th and 20th centuries, but they weren't too systematic. That's why scientists were so thrilled when they dug an entire pyramid's base after removing the 25-foot mound of sand that was covering it. Oh, and it turns out American archaeologists are excavating a cemetery in Egypt that could contain over 1 million mummified bodies. So far, archaeologists have dug around 1,700 mummies. One of the main differences from other classic Egyptian mummies is that these people weren't kings and pharaohs. They were commoners that most likely lived about 1,500 years ago, when Egypt was controlled by the Roman and Byzantine empires. The name of the cemetery is cool, though, the Way of the Water Buffalo, just in case you want to check it out on your next trip. Other than bulls and buffaloes, ancient Egyptians also liked baboons. Are you seeing a pattern here? In the beginning of the 20th century, archaeologists discovered a site filled with mummified baboons in a place called, guess what? The Valley of Monkeys. An animal wouldn't have been mummified if it wasn't considered important. Certain animals were more important than others, since they were linked to specific deities. Jackals were connected to Anubis, the ancient god of the afterlife, and cats were likened to the female deity Bastet. Baboons were a pretty big deal, since they were believed to be connected to Thoth, the deity of wisdom and advisor to Ra, one of Egypt's supreme deities. The archaeologists who studied these animals weren't too happy. They think these baboons were kept inside and were deprived of sunlight for most of their lives. They had extreme vitamin D deficiencies and they were poorly fed. Maybe Thoth got angry with these baboon keepers. Just a guess. Since there's never a boring day for archaeologists in Egypt, they also found human mummies with golden tongues. Since Egyptians were all about the afterlife, they believed that golden tongues might help a person speak once they pass to the other side. I mean, it's a long shot, but hey, why not? Some of these mummies were placed in wooden coffins with goods, such as necklaces, pottery, golden artifacts in the shape of lotus flowers and scarab beetles, and iPhones. Just kidding. A new temple was also unearthed recently in Egypt. Scientists believe it was dedicated to honor Zeus Cassios. That deity would be a cross between Zeus, the almighty Greek deity of the sky, and Mount Cassios. While digging around the Sinai Peninsula in Egypt, archaeologists spotted 2 pink granite columns poking out of the ground, and bingo. They believe these columns represented the temple's front gate and collapsed during an earthquake many years ago. And speaking of deities, there weren't only super serious deities. Recently, scientists unearthed a golden ring in a city south of Cairo. No, Frodo, it's not magical. It was a normal gold ring, but it had the depiction of the deity of fun, officially named Bes. This deity is often described in sacred texts as a happy chubby dwarf. Today, many tattoos we get are sorta deprived of any sense and are made of aesthetic purposes only. In ancient Egypt, though, women would get tattoos as a token of protection for childbirth. That's what scientists think, at least. Around the Nile region, scientists found some mummies that had well-preserved tattoos, which is a rarity since the skin deteriorates so easily. 2 of these women tattooed their lower backs, and the drawings were simple. They were mostly pictures, including that same chubby dwarf we just talked about, Bes. He also had a side hustle as the protector of women during childbirth. Now, would you believe me if I told you ancient Egyptians invented robots? No? Well, that's because that's not entirely true. Sure, they were astronomers, mathematicians, and engineers, and somehow they also squeezed an eccentric invention into that package – an automated deity some scientists called Hathor. This wooden statue had been in the Metropolitan Museum of Art for years before someone noticed its secret. With the help of an X-ray machine, specialists discovered a mechanical operating system inside it. The pulley-like axis goes from the statue's shoulder to her left leg. When the system rotates, the statue raises and lowers her hand. Hey, pick me! I got my hand up here.
It's 1898, and you're taking part in excavations in Sakara. This place, not far away from Cairo, is full of ancient tombs and pyramids. You're in your Indiana Jones mood and hope to find something really phenomenal to become famous. Gold, manuscripts, treasure maps, mummies of famous pharaohs. Wait, a wooden bird? You're really disappointed as it looks like a regular toy. An old one, but still. Little do you know that years later, someone would propose that your bird was actually an ancient monoplane. So the artifact, nicknamed the Sakara Bird, is made of a sycamore tree. The birdie has a wingspan of just 7 inches and weighs around 40 grams. A perfect original souvenir from Egypt, I would say. It's over 2,000 years old and looks pretty plain, without any carvings of feathers or other intricate ornaments. It has a beak and eyes though, which makes our find look like a hawk, the emblem of the deity Horus. Its tail is rather unusual as it's squared, looks weirdly upright, and it seems like the sunken part of it was the place for a now missing piece. Humans love solving a good mystery, so there have been several attempts to explain the use of the birdie. First, quite simply, is that it was a ceremonial object. The second idea is that it was a toy for a child from some well-off family. It could have been some sort of boomerang, which was a popular concept in ancient Egypt. Then there was a theory that the bird had been used as a weather vane. But this one has been debunked as the figure doesn't have any holes or markings, except for the one made at the museum in Cairo to fix the exhibit on a stick. So there was no way to hang it in the past. Almost a century after the bird was found, Egyptologist Dr. Khalil Masiha proposed a new theory that it could have been a model of a monoplane. He believed the bird was missing a horizontal tailplane. Otherwise, it had its wings set at a right angle, similar to that of modern planes. It could have worked to generate the aerodynamic lift necessary for flights. Dr. Masiha also claimed that it was common at that time to place miniature models of technological inventions in tombs. So, did the ancient Egyptians really invent the plane in 200 BCE? That would make the Wright brothers, who are considered the inventors of aviation, really upset. They made one of their first flights only in 1903. There's just one way to know for sure, and that is to test the model. But you know, the ancient museum in Cairo would unlikely let one of their cherished exhibits fly around like a toy. That's why glider designer Martin Gregory built a similar model, this time of balsa wood, and concluded that even with the missing tailplane, the plane wasn't much of a flyer. Case solved? Not really. This didn't sound convincing enough to the History Channel, so they invited an aerodynamics expert to build another replica of the bird. He tested it in weather conditions similar to those in Egypt and was impressed with the little plane's abilities. So, if they did invent the prototype of a plane back in the times of pharaohs, it would be a good example of an oupart. That's an out-of-place artifact, an object that's way ahead of its time in terms of technology or history. And the Sakara Bird isn't the only example of such a revolutionary concept. In 1901, a group of divers retrieved the Antikythera mechanism from an underwater shipwreck near the Greek island of Antikythera. It's been dubbed the world's first analog computer, and it's currently dated around 100 BCE. The bronze mechanism could tell the position of the sun, moon, planets, and stars, as well as the lunar phase, the dates of upcoming solar eclipses, and even the speed at which the moon moves through the sky. No one's sure who used it and how or where it was made. But it's obvious that it's extremely precise and way too advanced for its time. The first flushing toilets in the world were invented in the middle of the 20th century. Just kidding. The ancient Minoans on the Mediterranean island of Crete and the Indus Valley civilization both came up with this brilliant invention at the same time, around 4,000 years ago. The plumbing and sanitation were so well done that no one managed to design anything better until 2,000 years later. One ancient Minoan lavatory was discovered at the Palace of Knossos. It looks like it had a wooden seat set over a tunnel that directed water from a rooftop reservoir to an underground sewer. Other varieties got water from jugs. Only the super rich people could afford all this glory. So if you wanted to shop for real estate back then, the flushing toilet would be a telltale sign you were in the rich neighborhood. Automated doors became a cool, seemingly new invention back in 1931. But the technology behind them is actually much older. Think the 1st century CE old. Mathematician and engineer Heron of Alexandria came up with a hydraulic system to open and close temple doors. To bring it into action, you need to light a fire to produce heat. There was a brass pot under the fire, half filled with water. The inventor connected the brass pot to containers that acted as weights. When the fire was burning, the water moved into the containers. They went down and pulled the ropes. It was nothing like a supermarket door that opens in front of you before you even have time to think. Heron's door took hours to open, and there was no way to stop the process. That's why they only opened the doors once a day before people entered the temple, to add some mysticism at the temple during ceremonies. Spooky. Looks like the first ever battery was invented in Baghdad around 2,000 years ago. A German archaeologist found this oval-shaped clay jar in 1938. Scientists are still not sure what purpose it served and who exactly invented it. There is a theory that it was used for electroplating objects with precious metals. When they filled it with a weak acid like vinegar, the battery produced around 1 volt of electricity. Another theory says it was a vessel for sacred scrolls. Would you like to buy contact lenses designed by Leonardo da Vinci himself? In 1508, he invented a glass lens with a funnel on one side. You were supposed to wear it with water inside to improve your vision. Sounds a bit uncomfortable, doesn't it? So, around a century later, French scientist René Descartes decided to improve the idea and make the cornea contact the future lenses. Contacts because they contact your eyes, get it? The glass tube with liquid did help improve vision, but blinking was sadly impossible. 2.5 centuries later, new technologies in the glass industry let scientists design contacts that would fit in the eye and even let the wearer blink. Thanks, guys! Still, those lenses were made of heavy blown glass and didn't let the eye breathe. About 50 years later, contacts became plastic. Lightweight, unbreakable, and scratch-resistant, but still covering the entire eye. And then, in 1948, an English optical technician accidentally sanded down a plastic lens and figured out they'd still be in place even if they covered only the cornea. Imagine you're living in 19th century London and need to send a message to New York. It would have taken about 10 days to get there by ship. So when delivery time went from days to hours in 1858, it was a true sensation. The first message was sent by Queen Victoria herself. It was all made possible thanks to the transatlantic telegraph cable, running under the ocean. Sadly, the new cool invention only lasted a few weeks. It took years to bring it back to life.
One of the greatest mysteries in human history is probably the origins of the Great Pyramid of Giza. This massive, awe-inspiring structure has been puzzling pretty much everyone for thousands of years. How did ancient engineers, without modern tools or machines, manage to pull off something so jaw-droppingly monumental? Could it be that they had a bit of extraterrestrial help? We'll dwell on this theory a bit later, but first, how about one of the more tradiatonal explanations? It claims that ancient workers could have built massive ramps to haul giant stones up to the pyramid's higher levels. It sounds reasonable until you find out that there's barely any archaeological evidence for these ramps. Sure, smaller ramps might have been used, but huge, miles-long ramps? Not likely. And even if they had existed, they would have been an enormous feat in themselves, since the builders would have needed almost as much material for the ramp as for the pyramid itself. This is where things get interesting. Since the ramp theory doesn't fully hold up, we're left with an even bigger mystery. How did the Egyptians move millions of multi-ton stones with such precision? Well, some people point to extraterrestrial visitors. The idea that aliens might have been behind the construction of the pyramids has existed for decades. According to this theory, the pyramids were just too advanced for humans to have built on their own. The precision of the architecture, the sheer scale of the project, and the mysterious mathematical principles at play have made many people believe that some outside force must have lent a hand. One of the biggest arguments the supporters of this theory have is that building something as perfect as the Great Pyramid would have required a bird's eye view. And who could have had that view? Certainly not humans, but maybe a spaceship. Aliens could have hovered above, guiding the construction. If you thought things couldn't get any more mysterious, let's talk about the golden ratio. A mathematical principle you can meet everywhere in nature, from seashells to galaxies. And the Great Pyramid's proportions seem to align almost perfectly with the golden ratio. Alien theorists point to this as evidence that the Egyptians couldn't have pulled this off without some extraterrestrial help. Some people even went so far as to claim that alien remains had been found inside the Great Pyramid. But before you get too excited, keep in mind that there's no solid evidence to back this up. And still, let's take a closer look inside the Great Pyramid. If the exterior is impressive, the interior is downright mind-blowing. It's a labyrinth of tunnels, shafts, and chambers so complex that it's no wonder people have speculated about alien involvement. How could ancient humans have designed something so intricate and mysterious? Some believers say this is further proof that the pyramids were more than just tombs. They were either built or influenced by some kind of divine or extraterrestrial intelligence. And now, let's get into one of the wildest ideas. What if the pyramids were built to align with the stars or even act as part of an ancient space elevator? Some theorists suggest that the pyramids were aligned with certain constellations and served as landing sites for alien spacecraft. Come to think about it, the site indeed sounds like a cosmic airport. All those sharp angles, the perfect geometry, the precise alignment with the stars. Others go even further, proposing that the pyramids were part of a long-lost spacefaring technology. They could have been used to harness energy from stars or served as gateways between worlds. So, are the pyramids really ancient alien landing sites? Were they part of a cosmic energy grid? So far, there's no scientific proof to support these ideas. The Great Pyramid, with all its secrets and unanswered questions, continues to captivate everyone's attention. It's a reminder that there are still things in this world, and maybe beyond it, that we just don't fully understand. There are several places on Earth, awesome and mysterious, that evoke so many questions that some people believe they were built by or with the help of extraterrestrial intelligence. Let's explore those mystical destinations. In the hills above Cusco, Peru, you'll find an ancient Inca fortress called Sacsayhuaman. Some of the massive stones of its walls weigh as much as 360 tons. They're cut and fitted together surprisingly precisely, and no mortar is used. The stones used for this construction were transported over 20 miles from quarries. But how did the Inca do it? Did they ask for extraterrestrial help? Perhaps. But archaeologists disagree. They have found evidence that the Inca used advanced engineering techniques involving ropes and levers to move and fit the stones. Okay, let's move on to the Nazca lines. You can see them in the deserts of southern Peru. In this area, more than 800 lines and 300 shapes stretch across the deserted landscape. Those are called geoglyphs and are best viewed from the sky. That's how theories about alien involvement popped up. The lines were made by removing the top layer of reddish rocks to reveal the lighter ground beneath. And this is a pretty simple technique. You don't even need to use modern tools. The purpose of the Nazca lines is still a mystery, but most experts believe that they had some ceremonial significance. Now, the stone circle of Stonehenge must have something to do with extraterrestrial visitors, right? Those stones, some weighing as much as 50 tons, were brought from quarries hundreds of miles away. No wonder many people offered theories about alien intervention. Well, sorry to disappoint you, but archaeologists have proven that the monument could have actually been built with the help of technologies available around 5,000 years ago, such as wooden sleds and rollers. The exact purpose of Stonehenge is still under debate. Its builders could have used the stone circle to track the sun or to perform astronomy-related rituals. The next breath-stopping place on our list is the Egyptian pyramids, namely the pyramids of Giza just outside Cairo. They were built over 4,500 years ago. The largest of them, the Great Pyramid, is made of millions of 2-ton stones which are arranged with super precision. The pyramids also align with the stars of Orion's belt, and this makes some people believe that aliens might have helped to build these awe-inspiring constructions. Experts disagree. They say that although the exact methods the Egyptian builders used are still unclear, the pyramids are undoubtedly a human achievement. Ramps, levers, and a large workforce were likely used to move the stones into place. Then, how about Teotihuacan, located near modern-day Mexico City? Once, it was a thriving metropolis. The city was built more than 2,000 years ago, and its size and advanced architecture make people wonder if aliens played a key role in its construction. In reality, the city was created by several cultures, including the Maya and Zapotec. It was a center for trade, agriculture, and other activities, but it does have some connection to space. Its layout, with the pyramids aligned to celestial events, shows a deep understanding of astronomy. And still, it was the work of human hands. Now, let's travel to one of the most mysterious islands in the world, Easter Island. Nearly 900 stone figures known as moai stand there, some towering over 30 feet tall. These statues were carved from volcanic rock more than 1,000 years ago and moved across the island to their final resting places. This impressive feat, as well as the slightly creepy appearance of the figures, makes you think about some alien intervention, doesn't it? Well, another disappointment. It's believed that the Rapa Nui people used wooden sleds or rolling logs to transport the statues, and there's no evidence that extraterrestrials were involved. The last destination isn't even on Earth. In 1976, NASA's Viking 1 orbiter captured an image of what seemed to be a face on Mars. It sparked numerous theories about alien activity. The face seems to be staring up from the Martian surface, like evidence of the activity of an ancient alien civilization. But more detailed images from 2001, taken by the Mars Global Surveyor, revealed that the so-called face was just a natural mesa, an isolated flat-topped hill with steep sides. Does time really exist? Our brains don't actually have a built-in clock, which is why 5 minutes on social media feels a lot shorter than 5 minutes staring at a wall. Albert Einstein, one of history's greatest physicists, once challenged the notion that time was linear. He said that if you put your hand on a hot stove for a minute, it would feel like an hour. But if you sat with someone you liked for an hour, it'd feel like a minute. What Einstein meant was that time is relative to each person and situation. So, the big question is time just something humans made up? Our experience of time varies based on factors like attention, emotions, and memories. After all, time flies when you're having fun. Studies even show that time seems to move faster the higher up you live. Interestingly, time isn't controlled by a single part of our brain. Instead, multiple areas, like the hippocampus, cerebellum, and frontal cortex, all play a role. We also sense time based on how our bodies feel. Depending on the time of day, we might feel energetic, sleepy, or hungry, thanks to our body's internal clock, known as the circadian rhythm. This 24-hour cycle helps us stay aware of the time and manage our daily functions. Even animals like goldfish and dogs can sense time. They know when it's time to eat, even without understanding the concept of hours and minutes. This shows that our sense of time goes beyond just clocks and calendars. Time is everywhere, in the changing seasons, the sun rising and setting, and in how we age. It moves forward from the past to the present and into the future. famous physicist Stephen Hawking talked about how time has a direction, always moving forward. But then, do the past and future really exist? Our view of time is tied to what we experience in the moment. For a long time, people thought time flowed from past to future in a constant way across the universe. But in 1905, Einstein introduced his theory of general relativity, which showed that time isn't the same for everyone. According to his theory, time depends on how fast you're moving, and this idea is known as time dilation. However, the direction of time is the same for everyone. Einstein also came up with the idea that time and space are linked together in a fabric called spacetime. This fabric can bend around objects with a lot of energy, like the sun, which is why planets orbit around it. This bending creates what we call gravity. Time doesn't flow the same way when we look at it on a cosmic scale versus a biological one. In the space-time continuum, there's no clear-cut now that applies to everyone. And someone's now might be different from yours because of how time and space interact. In the special theory of relativity, there is no absolute time. It is different for each observer. However, there is a concept of proper time, the time measured by a clock following a particular line in four-dimensional space-time. The lives of each of us are these trajectories, and while on the one hand, time is not unique, on the other hand, for the given observer, time is unique. So, while time seems to exist, it's also a social construct we've created to help organize our lives. We measure events in seconds, minutes, and years to keep things in order. Without time, our modern world would be chaotic. Despite the latest findings in physics, the fact that we still rely on time in science and our daily life shows that time is more than just a social construct. And even if time is eventually proven to be an illusion, it's still a crucial part of how we live and understand the world. Traveling in time appeared in many sci-fi movies, but every law of physics claims that the only way we can move through time is forward. Well, thanks to some very exciting properties of space and time in Einstein's general relativity, going back in time seems to be possible after all. According to Einstein, space and time are not separate entities. They're woven together in the fabric of space-time. There's also a quantity that generalizes the concept of distance into four dimensions, the space-time interval. It takes into account distance in time. In other words, if you're resting, your spatial position doesn't change and you're moving through time forward at 1 second per second. But if you're moving and your spatial position changes, you travel through time more slowly. All because objects in relative motion experience something known as time dilation. Roughly speaking, the faster you travel through space, the more slowly you move through time. More precisely, time dilation is the difference in elapsed time as measured by two clocks because of a relative velocity between them. The faster the relative velocity, the greater the time dilation between them, with time slowing to a stop as one clock approaches the speed of light. However, keep in mind that we only know about massless objects, such as photons, that travel at the speed of light. Theoretically, if you could move faster than the speed of light, you'd become a tachyon, a hypothetical particle that always travels faster than light. Also, there is the energy-momentum relation that connects energy, momentum, and mass. One can see from that relation that if a particle moves faster than speed of light, then its mass is imaginary. So, this possibility is an unphysical situation, since tachyons don't correspond to anything that exists in our physical reality. However, Einstein thought that going faster than the speed of light wasn't the only way to travel backward in time. Space-time might not be flat and unchanging. It can be curved, can contract and expand, and can even create and maintain a connection between two different points within it. This possibility is known as an Einstein-Rosen bridge. If you jumped into one point and your friend jumped into the other, you could meet somewhere in the middle. At the same time, this tunnel wouldn't be passed through, and you wouldn't be able to get out on the other side. Now, try to imagine space-time as a two-dimensional sheet of paper. If you fold it, two points that were previously separated will become connected in this new two-dimensional world. This property of space-time might be the most important concept of time travel. You probably know this concept under the name of a wormhole. And it's tightly linked to black holes, regions of space containing so much matter and energy that any light emitted from that region, as well as any matter and radiation that falls there, will never escape. And it doesn't matter how much energy it has or how fast it's moving, even if it's the speed of light. Usually, it's assumed that black holes only lead to a central singularity, and if you fall behind the event horizon, also known as the point of no return, there is nothing but destruction awaiting you. But how about another possibility? What if black holes could actually transport you to another universe? Then, you would be expelled on the other side through something called a white hole, a time-reversed solution of a black hole. But so far, all this sci-fi theory is just a hypothesis. What we do know is that minuscule quantum fluctuations exist in our known universe. They occur throughout the fabric of space-time, most prominently on the tiniest of scales. Such energy fluctuations can occur very close to one another. They are most likely random and often include disconnections and reconnections from the original positive and negative states that initially occur together. If you somehow connected such positive and negative curvature regions together, you could get close to the notion of a quantum wormhole. And if such a wormhole remained intact for a long enough period of time, you could transport a particle through it. In other words, it'd instantly disappear from one location in space-time and reappear in another. But why is a wormhole so crucial when we talk about time travel? Because once you create two ends of a wormhole and maintain the connection between them with sufficient mass and energy, this connection will remain eternally. And since this is great for instantaneous travel through space, probably we could extend it to traveling through time too. Sadly, at the moment, it's just wishful thinking.
NASA is on the hunt for Dyson Spheres. Turns out there are 60 stars that give off weird light patterns. This means there might be some extraterrestrial technology nearby. A team of scientists has developed a new way to search for advanced civilizations by looking for Dyson Spheres. All forms of life, from microbes to us, need energy in order to survive. As living creatures keep evolving, their energy needs grow. We started with small fires, then moved on to coal, oil, and eventually solar panels. Now imagine a super advanced civilization that has used up all the energy sources on its planet. What's next? Their host star, an almost limitless power source. This is where the idea of Dyson Spheres comes in. It was made up by the physicist Freeman Dyson in the 1960s. This idea says that, hypothetically, we could build an incredibly big structure around a star to capture its energy, like some sort of gigantic solar panel. Advanced civilizations could use it to power their planet and even interstellar travel. Right now, something like this would be impossible for us to build, but maybe someone else in the universe has managed to pull that off. Scientists gathered lots of data from surveys of stars. They analyzed over 5 million objects and found some candidates. Of course, extraterrestrial civilizations might have completely different technology, so astronomers aren't looking for actual giant shells around stars. Instead, they're looking for technosignatures. These are weird things that might indicate the presence of something technological and can't be explained by known natural sources like galaxies or nebula. For example, a structure like a Dyson sphere could give off unusual infrared radiation. This is because, while absorbing a star's energy, this structure would give off crazy amounts of heat. Out of millions, they identified 368 potential candidates. Further filtering left them with only 7 objects that could be Dyson spheres. Now usually, weird infrared flickering happens from giant crashes in space, like planetary collisions. Warmed up dust and rocks get scattered around and give off strange lighting patterns. These are called extreme debris disks. The researchers think these 7 objects could be M-type stars, also called red dwarfs. These are stars that are very small on the space scale and a bit fainter than our Sun, a yellow dwarf. Stars like that don't usually have warm dust and rocks around them, but scientists need to do more tests, like looking at the light in detail, to be sure about their discovery. There was another study that found 53 star candidates with similar excess infrared radiation. But these also need to be checked. Scientists plan to use advanced tools like the James Webb Space Telescope to take a closer look at all these candidates. One famous candidate is Tabby's star. Scientists even made a joking name for it because the paper about this star had the subtitle, "Where's the Flux?" Think of an acronym yourself. Now, it's a bit hotter and more massive than our Sun. It's caught NASA's attention because of its unusual, irregular light dimming. For some reason, it doesn't glow like a normal star, but blinks, as if someone turns on and off a flashlight. At first, you might think this is just because some big planet is passing in front of it, or a comet. But we're talking up to a 22% drop in light. No planet could manage to eclipse a quarter of a star, and that's where the name comes in. So, another explanation is a Dyson sphere or some similar megastructure. Someone also suggested that the dips might be caused by fragments from a broken exomoon orbiting the star. There are other stars that show similar traits, but there's no solid evidence to support this. So for now, scientists just don't know. So astronomers are on the hunt for any giant structures. There are many variations of what a Dyson sphere could look like: rings, bubbles, a swarm of satellites, a giant shell, and so on. A Dyson shell would be a solid, rigid shell completely enclosing the star. This is the most extreme option, the hardest one to build. Also, if other civilizations built that thing, it would fully cover the star's light, and we simply wouldn't see it. The inner surface of this shell could be lined with habitats, and we could simulate gravity by rotating the structure around the Sun. A Dyson swarm is the simplest option, a bunch of solar-collecting satellites and habitats orbiting the star. It would be a lovely place, with people living in many space stations or mini space houses within the swarm. Each little habitat would have its own air, life support systems, and artificial gravity. We could also grow our little farms there. And imagine the view. We would see a constant bright sky with other habitats visible across the expanse. A near unlimited energy of a star would mean we could advance our technology very fast, manufacture tons of materials, and terraform planets within the star system. But building and maintaining a Dyson sphere would require advanced robotics, AI, and tons of money. It would take us centuries or millennia to get there. Now, giant megastructures aren't the only things that scientists are looking for in order to find extraterrestrial life. They also look at the planets. Now, planets must have certain characteristics to be potential homes. There should be liquid water and an energy source, something to drive these reactions, creating the building blocks of life. Turns out such conditions aren't rare at all. Our search showed that there might be more than 60 billion potential habitable planets in the Milky Way alone. Unfortunately, we can't look at them directly or land there. So we have to use tricks, like detecting water and good gases in their atmosphere. Recently, the James Webb Space Telescope found possible signs of life on a planet called K218b, which is pretty close, about 120 light-years from Earth. This planet is 9 times the size of Earth. It has clouds of liquid water but a different atmosphere, full of gases like methane, carbon dioxide, and dimethyl sulfide. Regular oxygen-breathing life wouldn't do well at all there, but on Earth, dimethyl sulfide is produced by life forms like phytoplankton. They also discovered that weird wiggly planets could be signs of advanced extraterrestrial civilizations. In our solar system, each planet has its own orbit. But the universe likes to surprise us. Surprise! Models show that there might be planets that share the same orbit. For example, is possible if the planets are evenly spaced around the star, minimizing their gravitational impact on each other. Or the so-called horseshoe configuration, when planets speed up and slow down in relation to each other, moving in funny wiggly ways. These horseshoe systems can hold up to 24 planets. This is one of those things that are possible but very unlikely without some help. Normally, gravity would immediately destabilize such systems. This means that if we ever find a star system with 24 planets sharing orbits, it might indicate that some advanced civilization decided to lend a hand. They also might contact us themselves. The search for extraterrestrial intelligence began in the 1960s when astronomer Frank Drake started listening for radio signals from space. Today, they persist. Astronomers listen for leakage radiation from other civilizations, which are radio waves unintentionally sent into space from everyday activities. Recently, they detected radio waves from YZ Ceti b, a planet super close to us, just 12 light-years away. This means it might have a magnetic field, invisible shields that are very important for protecting life from the solar radiation. But YZ Ceti b is probably too close to its star to be habitable. But there are a lot of places for such a signal to come from. It turns out there are 1,000 star systems in our galaxy where they can see us in the sky. All these stars have a perfect view of Earth passing in front of the Sun, making it easy for potential extraterrestrial astronomers to spot us. So, there are over 1,000 star systems that could be watching us right now. And if we study them, we might one day find evidence of intelligent life looking back at us. Hello!